Hello, in this video you'll learn how to use CountBy and AggregateBy, these new features in .NET 9. Also you'll see how it all compares to the older approach, basically on the .NET 8 and earlier versions of .NET. You'll see how it compares, how the code changes, but in general these new approaches, of course, you'll see the code is a bit cleaner, it's perhaps a bit smoother in some ways, but also in general it does seem to be the case that performance is better by using these newer features. So let's take a look at the example, quite a simple one. We have essentially a list of sales. And then we'll want to group the sales by the region and get basically the amount, the total amount for it. The object here is quite simple. It's a record, sale, we have date, product ID right here, and we also have region, and we also have the value for it. So a relatively simple arrangement here. Now, moving on. The first thing is the old approach. So to do this, to group essentially by region and then count totals for each region and then display just one record essentially for one region with that total count, we would use group by, and then we select and then we count. Kind of a difficult and tricky thing to do, but let's get into this. We have group by from the sales right here. We have group by, so we group by region. Now this gives us essentially a list now of lists. So you'll have, say, region south right here. Then you'll have a list of these amounts for each one of those regions. So key will be south, and then the amounts will be 1550 and 1250 and all those other amounts that would apply, and so on for the other regions. So basically that's what we get, and then in the end we just select something a bit different. We get the name of the group as region, but then we will also just get one value that would be the count. So we get G being the actual sale for that particular region. So the amount, we count, and we get the result. Now this is kind of tricky and kind of cumbersome and not very efficient as well. We need to do grouping, then we need to select, and then we need to count for each one. It can get a bit annoying. Now the new approach is actually a lot more streamlined, I would say. This is it. This is all that there is to it, really. And the result will be exactly the same. We have our list, and then we use count by. And we count by what? Region, and that's it. So we count those values by region, and we get our value, our result. Relatively straightforward. Now there are some perhaps tricky arrangements where you would still need to use group by if you have something more complex, but for something this straightforward you can simply use count by, and again the result will be exactly the same as using this previous approach. Now if we just run it quickly, you can see right here we have this traditional approach for the older generations of .NET. We have 3-3, and then in the new one we have 3-3, and then 2-2 for east and west, so it does match exactly. Now then, the second part, we have kind of, again, a relatively sort of tricky arrangement in this case. Basically the same approach. We need to group by region, and then we do select. And in this select, we try and get all those things. Now, this is sort of exactly the same thing, but in this case, we get the total. So by using sum. Okay, so the previous was we were getting the count. We are getting the count of the whole list essentially for each region. Now in this case we're summing up, so basically if we look at this traditional approach here, we have region key and count we had. In this case we will have the same exact thing, region the key, and then total will be not count, but sum. So we will just sum up all those amounts, and that will be the total for each region. It will be displayed in the same exact list as it was before. But again, we do need to use that group, and then in select, we actually make those calculations for those grouped items. But now there is sort of an easier way. It's not like CountBy. It is a bit perhaps more trickier. I would say it is cleaner, and generally it should be a bit faster in terms of performance. Maybe most cases that won't matter, but something to think about as well. So we have AggregateBy. This will do exactly the same thing. It will group. It will start the group from somewhere. So basically where it needs to start. Now we usually start from 0. The seed is 0. You may notice some wrong data somewhere out there in the world. There are basically these 3 parts to it. We have key selector. So basically on which key we'll, or rather on which property we will be grouping at, that will become the key. And then the seed, that's where it all starts, so where we start each group basically. But those 3 things is what you need, not something else. So key selector, seed, and then we have this sort of expression, a little function of sorts, where we just have that result, which will be the value. So in the end, we'll have the key that is selected by the key selector, and then we'll have the value that is this essentially third parameter in this method, because it is a method if you look at it. So we have this little function, we have it as third parameter, and then we do whatever calculation we need to do. Now we could also do something else in this whole arrangement as well, but mostly it will be amount or something like that. So you can add and do it that way. The total, this is interesting. The total starts with 0 because we have started with 0 right here. So the total plus the current sale amount in that particular iteration, if you will, that will add up. And then the total will increase until it goes basically through every part of each group, and then you have your result. And then you use it by using key and the value. And again, this could be some different calculation. You could have something like a percentage calculation using some different value, because you can actually access all the other things as well. So if you had some quantity and amount or something of that nature, you could do a lot more complex calculations in this whole thing as well. So something to be considered. There are more use cases than just this sort of essentially summing up all the values. You can actually expand it, and that can be a lot more useful than this sort of more traditional approach. Although in the end it's kind of similar. You will probably have relatively similar choices, but it does seem to be faster, at least that's what the data shows. So it is probably at this point would be recommended to use this approach rather than the old one, as long as you can use .NET 9. And with that said, we will conclude this video.